I have been asked to make this video for the longest time, and I've finally gotten around to doing it. This is my ultimate guide on how to lowball. It's gonna have all the tips I use and show how I make hundreds of millions of coins an hour so easily. Now, what is lowballing? In the simplest terms, lowballing is simply buying items for cheaper from people so they can avoid the hassle of waiting for items to sell and the taxes that come with it. Think of it like taking a loan from a bank. When we take a loan from a bank, we get a bunch of money in return instantly. However, we have to pay interest on that money, which is almost the fee for getting it instantly. This is like lowballing. The reason we buy it for cheaper and they sell it for cheaper is because they are willing to spend a little bit of money to get the money instantly. Before I get into the tips and the methods, you should subscribe because I'm extremely close to getting monetized and I want money. Also join the Discord server so you can ask me questions about lowballing directly. So the first thing you might ask yourself when you're starting to lowball is how much money should I start with? In my opinion, the absolute minimum of money you should have is 30 mil. Even though 30 mil may not seem like enough, you can definitely build up from this 30 mil by making small amounts of profit at a time. The amount of money that you have in your purse is directly proportional to the profits that you make from lowballing. This is why people with massive purses like 20 billion coins are able to make much more money than I or other people can. Another one of the most extremely important things to note is how not to get muted. The main thing when trying not to get muted is not spamming. When you're making your lowballing message, don't add a bunch of unnecessary like symbols at the end to stop the same message twice thing. Instead, just say something that looks natural like /visit me to the end, or I don't know, something. Just say something that's not a bunch of symbols and spam that will look annoying. What I usually do is I start with lowballing, then the amount of money I have in my purse, and then 30 mil plus items. I'll start with that message, and then I'll go through hub 1 and 2 saying that, and if no one joins, I'll go back to hub 1, and I'll say the same message, but with visit me at the end. Another important thing to note, when you go into a different hub and you try to talk instantly, you have to wait a bit before chatting, and then if you try to say the same thing again, it will say that you've said the same message twice. This is why once you join a lobby, wait 5 seconds before saying your lowballing message. Another important thing to note while lowballing are your requirements. You may see people when they're lowballing say like no exotics or normal rules, and this is simply the items that they don't take. However, I disagree with not taking some items, because if other lowballers aren't buying the items, that means there's a lower demand for those items. And per the law of demand, as demand decreases, price decreases, meaning that you can get really good deals on these items that no other lowballers will take. The only requirement that I consider is the value of the items. I always say 20 or 30 mil plus items because I can't be bothered to deal with items that are cheaper than that. Another really important thing to note before starting to lowball are common scams that can occur. There are 3 main types of scams that occur when you're lowballing. What many people will try to do is they'll tell you that they're selling a bunch of items like god potions or matriarch's perfumes, items that just sell really fast and are cheap. They'll then tell you that they can only list it on the auction house because they can't trade it with you or something, and they'll say they'll list it for really cheap and you've got to buy it before someone else does. So they'll put it up on the AH for like 100k, they'll try get you to buy it as fast as possible. However, they will probably list one for 100 mil instead of 100k, hoping that you will buy it by accident instead of the 100k ones. Another extremely common scam is just replacing the item that you thought you were buying with the item that's worth less. For example, they might put a giant sword in the slot and get you to calculate the price, and then when you're about to trade, instead of putting the giant sword in, they'll put a liver dagger in, which looks the same, in hopes that you'll buy it without looking. This is why you should always check the items you're buying just before you buy it. Another extremely common scam is market manipulation. Sometimes you might find people come to you with items that may seem useless but are worth hundreds of millions of coins. This is most likely market manipulation, where people have manipulated the price on the AH. To avoid market manipulation scams, make sure to always check the past sales and how much people have been buying them for in the past. To start lowballing, go around hubs 1 and 2 stating your lowballing message until someone visits your island. The first step of lowballing is determining the price of an item. After they show you the item, you will need to evaluate the price of the items, and there are 3 main things to consider when finding the price of an item. 1 is past sales, 2 is the auction house price, and 3 is the craft price. To check past sales, I use a website called CoffleNet. Put the item into CoffleNet and any other notable features like Master Stars, Tier 7 enchants, Ultimate enchants. To find the AH price, simply look at lowest bin or the one closest to the one that they're selling. And for the craft price, you can calculate yourself by looking at all the notable items that have been used to craft this item. To evaluate the total estimated value of the item, find a price that fits between these three factors. Checking past sales and craft price helps to make sure that the prices on AH aren't overpriced or manipulated to make sure you aren't getting scammed. Also note, the craft for forged items doesn't really matter because the time it takes for forging adds more value to the items. The next step is purchasing the item. Once you have gathered a value for the item from those three factors, you need to determine a lowball that you're going to buy it for. Determining the lowball is mainly influenced by two factors. 1. Price, and 2. Demand. Price affects it because if it takes more money out of your purse, you have less potential money to be made if you were to continue lowballing. Demand influences it because this simply means how long it will take to sell. If it takes a long time to sell, then you should do a bigger lowball because the time it takes to sell is also potential money that you could be making. The next step is determining the amount of money you're going to buy it for. Every good lowballer must be able to negotiate. This is how you can maximize the amount of money you make from lowballing. Always start by offering low. It doesn't matter what type of items, always just start with a harsh lowball. This way you lower their expectation, then you can build up to what you think is a good offer while they think they're getting a really good deal as well because they've made you go from a lower price to a higher price. Another negotiation strategy I use is stating reasons why their item is worth less money. This way, when you ask for a lower price, it will seem less absurd to them and hopefully you will be able to get it for really cheap. I usually explain how the item is worth less by the low demand, craft price, usefulness of the item, and other things like this. Another thing to look out for when you're lowballing is if they have multiple items, always go low. People usually can't be bothered to add up the value of all their items if they have multiple, so going low is a good way to make lots of money. To determine a good lowball from an item, a lot of people use percentages. However, I usually like to stick with profit by looking at how long it takes the item to sell and how much it costs. Determine an amount of money that you think you should be able to get out of an item. The final step is selling it on the auction house. This may seem simple, but there are some things you should look out for. When selling it, just look for the lowest bin or most similar item and undercut by 1 coin. This means that people will buy it first instead of the other item because it seems cheaper and then you're also not losing any money. When listing the item, always list it for 14 days because it costs like 20k and you don't want to risk having to relist the item because that costs money for the AH taxes. Now remember, when you're lowballing, don't expect to make hundreds of millions of coins per hour instantly. I've been lowballing for about a year and I have many methods that I've mastered over time. However, just like everything, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So good luck, and if you have any questions, join my Discord server and I can answer them personally.